Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters European region. We are going to continue on with our day with our match number 4. And it's going to be Jarla versus Casie. Both players been on the receiving end of a 0-3 match, which is honestly just no fun, right? It's not fun to get swept. No one enjoys that. But this is the moment where they can start fighting back and still have a chance to get into that top 4 and play on Sunday for the most points possible going into Swiss Week 3 next week. So we'll see what they're kicking off with there. Jarla going to start with that Tempo Mage available to him there to start this off and maybe to try and duplicate what we've just seen from RDU with a Mage Sweep.
Yeah, certainly would put him in a pretty positive position. RDU finds himself qualified for Sunday by merit of those 2 victories, putting him all the way through the winners bracket, qualifying out for Sunday. Probably something that we didn't touch on quite enough as we were distracted by arguing about Zoo at the end. But RDU is out, and we're now switching over to the lower side of the bracket, where these players are now 1 defeat away from having their weekend put to an end. But any of these players could still join RDU as our qualifier out of Group A to go through to Sunday and fight for that all-important week victory and try and hunt down Blaze at the top of the standings after his performance in the previous week.
But one thing to keep a note on here as the players are just prepping to get into their first game is, you mentioned trying to hunt down Blaze. Well, RDU got 2nd place last week and he's already now in top 4, which means if he just has a good week and say Blaze doesn't make it to top 4 tomorrow, then it'll be RDU sitting pretty on top.
Absolutely. But it is going to be Mage versus Rogue here, and this has been, weirdly, perhaps morbidly, one of my favorite matchups to play in the new expansion. It is incredibly wacky. It can get incredibly clowny, but just the amount of bizarre value and generation that both of these decks have, despite looking on the surface like they are very low value overall, leads to some very explosive mid and late game situations between the 2 decks.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest here. It might make me sound rubbish, which is fine. I'm kind of used to it. But I think throughout the history of Hearthstone, I have rarely, if ever, been perplexed by a matchup than one like this right now. Because I just, if you ask how is someone supposed to play it, how is someone supposed to win, how does this deck beat this deck, what are the percentages? I just don't know. I don't even know where to. I don't even know where to start because, as you mentioned, it starts off with both decks doing the usual openings.
Yeah.
And then they kind of just throw it out the window and play with a different 30 cards every game. So how are you supposed to, get a handle? I think this is very much a almost intuitive and just execution-based matchup, and it's more about just working with what you've got than knowing any kind of macro strategy, honestly.
Yeah, intuitive is a good word for it. Like, there's certainly a point where generated cards from like a limited pool can increase the skill of the game. This might go a step too far, where the generation is such nonsense that you just can't really account for it, and a lot of plays become slightly more inherently random. But I will say, despite the amount of created buy in the matchup, the key cards, the game-winning cards on both sides, do start in the decks, and it's the Mana Giants, the Questing Adventurers, the Edwin Van Cleaves, the Apprentices, the Cult Neophytes, for example, can be huge for early tempo as well. And, like Hanar for the Rogue as well. Like, those are the key things that you do have to look out for a lot of the time. And all of the created by stuff is sort of auxiliary to support that most of the time. And the matchup really comes down to, like, when the big threats come down on either side, is there a Ray of Frost to deal with it? Is there a Blackjack Stunner to deal with it from the Rogue side? All that kind of business. Can the Mage, if they're behind, like, stall long enough to get primes in their deck and draw them out? That kind of thing. So the game plan is largely consistent overall, and you see straight away Casie just going for threat check number 1, which is all the way in on his Questing Adventurer. And then kind of running out of gas as he hits into the devolving missiles. But he's now going to immediately prep his passage and see if he can find an additional threat to follow this up straight away. And he does with the second Questing Adventurer. If this had whiffed in terms of pressure, we might have just seen Casie falling too far behind in overall value because of just how hard he's gone in on the early game.
And the Dragon's Horde as well. That's a big deal because Casie may not play it next turn. He might not play it the turn after, although every time I say this, they do play it the next turn. But the the Fireheart is huge, and this is the point, right? What you broke down there was very good. Just how the early game sort of threats play out, players having to be able to have some kind of response. But if the reactions are correct and the game continues, you start to just go into kind of wacky land, right?
Yep.
Where you just need to work with what you've got and try and either keep up or end the game swiftly, and that's where it gets pretty crazy. And we're slowly edging towards that point now.
I'm slightly upset that we do appear to be frozen on Casey's camera view right now, because I'm sure his reactions to these two questing adventurers getting dealt with so easily would be legendary at this point.
I thought that was his reaction. He just couldn't believe it. Just the deadpan stare is enough.
Famously stoic Hearthstone player Casie, yes. Fireheart was key here, though. You see just the extra value gained off this already. It was a pretty dry-looking hand, but now definitely got some more stuff going on.
Yep. Nothing Jarla can do too crazy with these minions. They are basically just flat stats.
Yep.
Jarla taking his time, though. Is he... Okay, so I know I mention it, but real talk, is Jarla seriously thinking about the mind games here because the minions are so similar?
I mean, maybe. Like, it's... If you want to go for it, you can go for it, sure. There's not really too much to analyze and break down in it. It's just a gambit, right? You'll throw it out there occasionally. There are times where you can break it down and it makes sense. Say you have a taunt in play, neither of these minions have taunt, and then you can kind of battlegrounds it out as to how the attacks are going to go in order. Okay, they put that minion into my taunt minion, and then this small source of damage will attack this minion. Well, I can actually play around that by doing it the wrong way around. And you see, Jarla did...
Look at his face!
Put it on the small one, and then Casie shot the small one. I don't know how long we can really talk about this, but that's just what's gonna happen.
But I promise you... Wow, that's a good evolve. I promise you, the only reason I brought it up was because Jarla sat on it for so long.
Yeah.
I was going to make a conscious effort to not joke around with that too much, but Jarla did sit on it for quite a while, so it did just tickle me.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're starting to see Casey's hand here turn into the typical hand this deck has, with just some cards that generate some stuff, see where the path takes you at this point. Jarla, on the other hand, does still have a pretty solid plan here. I would imagine he's going to go for some heavy card draw, as he can take a hit on being on 29 health right now. Do you think he'll prioritize card draw and then try and set up for the big turn to try and take control of the game?
I do, yeah. And I like that he led with Arcane Intellect there as well over the Lab Partner, because Lab Partner Cram Session, same thing, 3 mana, draws 2 cards, but you don't necessarily, I think, just want to have this Lab Partner on board against a 5-3 when you don't necessarily draw an answer to that situation. As it happened, he did pick up Brain Freeze, which would have been great here if he had the Lab Partner on board. It still is, of course, but he could have achieved the same thing with the Lab Partner and found the answer for the 5-3, which would have been scary. But there's no guarantee of that happening, so I like him going with the AI.
At this point, is there ever a consideration for the Cram Session on its own? Or is that just throwing away potential value, really?
I think so, yeah. Particularly when the spell damage minion you have only costs 1, so it's not going to be that difficult to squeeze that in as a tempo option, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you were sat with Archmage in your hand as your spell damage card, then you might never feel like you're going to line those 2 cards up and you could just rip it for 1, but it's a Lab Partner. You're going to make that happen at some point.
Oh, Arcane Intellect of his own if Casie so chooses here, and I do like it. Although the deck generates a ton of stuff in hand, I think card draw is important. And you say, "Oh, what are you on about, Sol? That looks like a dragon in hand to me."
It does, but I mean, the standard of cards that you can get off Dragon's Horde are pretty high overall. And Dragon Rider, what's it called? Taurith? Something like that? Yeah. Is not really one of what I would consider the premium picks.
Jarla, I think weighing up coin invocation. Would have 7 mana to play with, and how many? 5 cards if you did that?
Probably go lab partner first in that regard, yeah, since it's going to give you the spell damage off all your stuff anyway. 1 less mana, 1 extra card slot.
Session, right?
Yep. Try and get some of these giants out this turn and deal with the giant on the opposing side of the board.
There's a brain freeze, I believe, on that far left, right? That's combo activated. So at worst, there is a freeze effect, even if it doesn't kill Van Cleef. Jarla got his answer he needed. The rest of the turn, though,
not great.
Not great at all.
Magic trick?
Count the spell? We're both leading different ways there. Oh. Oh. Oh, okay. I was a little bit worried just for a second that Jarla pressed Magic Trick and just didn't get to choose the spell, which would have been pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened that turn. Because, for example, he could have Magic Tricked into, like, Ray of Frost, which would have killed the Edwin Van Cleef and got his Giants into play. With, you know, Ray of Frost being a double up on a generated card, potentially, or 1 mana Giant into play. Magic Trick into Brain Freeze would at least have taken care of the Edwin because he had the spell damage in play as well. Like, it felt like Magic Trick was a pretty good card to play that turn. Like, lead the Magic Trick, see what it offers, and then if you don't get anything you want to play immediately, then go with the Flame Ward that he ended up playing.
This is the difference, honestly, between a player like Jarla and judging from what we saw from Blythe last week, right? The hesitation that the maybe overthinking turns like this maybe doesn't pay off, whereas Blythe, again, he might miss a couple of things now and again, but you can't say he didn't make decisions quick playing the Druid and the Mage from last week. So, you know, it's one of those things that Magic Trick could have just been played.
It was the Druid turn where he, like, procced his Kael'thas 4 times before the rope even appeared, and then passed back to his opponent and just tabbed out and started reading Twitter while his opponent roped. It was amazing. Like, I'll never get over it. It was so great. The biggest baller move I've ever seen in a game of Hearthstone.
Time is money, friend.
Yep.
Now already, I feel like Jarla's not giving himself enough time to make these decisions.
I agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
Now, like, that cram session just felt terrible. And I don't know if it actually was, but it felt like watching it because he's just left all this up.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we know that there is the Flame Ward on Jarla's side, but Casey's always just going to trade away the spell damage minion so the Cleef lives anyway. But even just Shadow Step. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you can just use a Shadow Step.
Yeah, I like it.
Because one Thief is so good, right? That it's just it's always going to do Casie a good enough job to warrant that Shadow Step there.
Ooh. Conjurer's Calling, I think, was the utter juice there on your 7 mana 7/1.
I do like this Shadow Step again, though, from Casie. The Van Cleef's done a great job at soaking up damage, being a threat, causing some problems for Jarla. Why not make it continue to be a pain for Jarla to deal with, or at least have to consider?
Right.
Now going into this turn, which could be the last turn of the game, honestly, looking at it from Casey's point of view, but Jarla has to go off, and I think he has to go off very quickly to make some strong decisions, because this Mana Cyclone could make or break this game.
He has 2 spells in his hand, though. 3 after the One Thief. And I guess the trick.
Yeah. And the trick's an extra, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enough. And that's what he's got to work with. Nova. Woo! That'll do.
Certainly will. It's not like this is a dream hand that's, you know, full of Brain Freezes and Ray of Frosts that could just pick apart this board while you make your big Sorcerer's Mana Giant turn. Certainly is a swing turn. Just not necessarily as effective as it could have been. Amazing.
I did wonder whether he actually won. Oh, okay. I was looking whether Jarla would have considered getting the Firebrand down as well, you know, for a much better arcane missile effect than that. A second Frost Nova. This could just be the old Freeze Mage style suddenly coming out to play. Freeze, go face for some damage, freeze again, and that's going to be the game. We'll have to see if Jarla can pull it off or if Casie has some answers here, because Casie also has some freeze of his own, and also that Kelly Dan can kill off one of these giants, no problem.
Yeah, which I think is the whole reason why it was picked to begin with, for this exactly eventuality. And I talked about it a little bit at the beginning. Like, the game almost invariably gets to this point. Like, it looked like Casie went all in and he was just dead, right? Like, he was just out of stuff after questing adventurer, But even when one player seemingly goes all in like that, the game does seem to always resolve down to this point where there's just big minions on either side and they have to be dealt with, and neither deck is particularly good at cleanly dealing with them. A lot of it is just, you know, saps from blackjack stunners, freezes instead of actually killing the minion from the mage side. So the additional pickup of just a Caladan to say, all right, I actively kill one of your big things, I think that's a pretty good addition to Casey's hand from back when he chose it very, very long time ago.
Yeah, and right now, I think Jarla has to be, I'm going to use the word brave, but just go deep, plan to go deep freeze into deep freeze on this Van Cleave. Because is he really expecting Casie to be able to beat down not only this board, but 4 water elementals? Like, that's a big ask, especially when you're saying you just don't get to play with Van Cleave this game. So I like this a lot from Jarla here, because Nova looks good because you kind of do the same board again, you protect the giant, but the 2 elementals make up for the giant being a little bit susceptible to removal here.
Yeah, and I really like that he went with Incanter's Flow over the ping here, even though a lot of people might have just looked at that 1/1 taunt and gone, yeah, ping that thing out of the way. Because now he can draw some cheaper spells and potentially get a cleaner turn with, like, Shenvala Frost Nova AI cast a spell, for example, if it comes down to that after the deep freezes have been exhausted.
And now there are options, right? I mean, I mentioned deep freeze into deep freeze. He doesn't have to run with that, of course. With Shenvala, you've always got to take a look. But having 4 water elementals on board when your opponent does not run Flick. I know you were talking about last week, right? About some of the plays including Flick as the extreme top end or not in Rogue. Well, Casie does not. So to me, having 4 water elementals on board, then a Frost Nova in hand, looks pretty fantastic.
Agreed. I like it.
I'm really surprised Jarla's gone for something else here.
Well, the other alternative is defensive Conjurer's Calling and try and clear the board, which I think is a prospect, right? Like, you can Conjurer's Calling and Edwin into 2/3 drops and potentially clear that up between Firebrand and the rest of your removal spells, which I think is a possibility. And going off the AI here, this is something that this is what I talked about when he cast the Incanter's Flow, is that I really like the opportunities that afforded him of giving himself Shenvala turns in the future, which is what he's chosen to divert and go for here. And honestly, he's giving me such anxiety playing this deck. Like, he leaves himself no time for decisions towards the end of his turn by waiting so long to start.
Oh! Well, that was a good draw, wasn't it? Activating the 2 blackjack stunners. Without that, Casie honestly was probably just dead.
Yeah.
So where's the bounce going there? On the other water elemental, Casie banking on the fact that Jarla can, well, probably won't be able to fill the board with 5/5s, and the water elementals could have frozen out Van Cleave again. But there's a Nova. And now Ray of Frost. It's just, it's probably good that Casey's camera is not working right now, because I can only imagine what he's going to look like when these freezes come down.
Deep freeze, Ray, freeze everything, spawn another 5/5, smack him in the mush. That seems like a Hearthstone turn. Hit him in the face.
Actually,
just to translate. Sorry for those of you out there that don't speak fluent British.
I'm just wondering, what about the utilizing the flame the Firebrand, with like Nova and then Ray of Frost to kill off the 1/2 so they can't be Shadow Step? Does that ever matter? I'm thinking of very silly things.
Not
right
when
now,
all the Shadow Steps have gone. I like where your head's at. With
sorry,
the power of Deck Tracker combined, Raven, he's out Shadow Step.
You gotta say the power of Deck Tracker compels me or something. I was like, where's he going with this? It's just the way you started that sentence. I was like, huh? But no, I think honestly, like looking at Jarla's hand, I think you probably got a good idea. As long as he freezes stuff and keeps making minions, Casie is going to have a very difficult time, if not impossible, to defend against this. And I think we see that now. The Pharaoh Cat not giving Casie what he needed. Jarla going 1-0 up, and the Mage looking pretty strong.
Yeah, I do like where your head was at the end of that game. It was actually the first thing I looked at before I decided to just smack him in the head with everything. But then, glancing over at my deck tracker, I was like, oh, he's out of Shadow Steps. Because it really is like, it's #1 thing that you have to be very disciplined about when playing against that deck, is that like, when a Blackjack Stunner has been used, its work is not done. Like, you have to put damage into that thing to get it off the board. It's one of the most frustrating parts, because repeated value of Blackjack Stunners can be an absolute disaster. But Casie was not only low on secrets, he was out of Shadow Steps at that point. So the chances that there was going to be any kind of punish to come through was unlikely. Jarla went a little bit more conservative than I was suggesting, choosing to hold back Ray of Frost for any emergency that might come off, randomly generated nonsense on the backswing, which is justifiable. I think we'd be largely quibbling over 99.99% games at that point.
Right, and it was... I think now we're seeing that Casey's going to be playing Soul Demon Hunter against this mage of Jarla, and this is where, if you were going solely off what you saw last game, you would never queue Soul Demon Hunter ever against that mage because of the amount of the freezes that were locked on, or at least the deep freeze. But obviously, like, the deck doesn't run anything that actually freezes face, so generally, I deem this a pretty decent matchup for Soul Demon Hunter, because mage can't really stop you just hitting them for 30 a lot of the time, right? They do struggle because you aren't minion reliant, and it's almost the complete opposite reason why I was saying I think mage could be quite good versus Zoo, because you can freeze out all their minion pressure. Yeah,
no, I very much agree. I think Rogue and Mage are largely similar decks. Like, not the face aggro rogues, like the kind of rogues that we're seeing Casie play and this Mage. I think they're quite similar, and I think those two matchups are largely where this deck really shines, in that you can just kind of go face for a bunch of damage, and neither deck really has anything to play around that. You always kind of have to add the asterisk of there's some randomly generated cards in their class that they can find that mess with it. Frostbolts and mirror images and deep freezes and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the natural deck list, they do have a weakness to that idea of just going face very, very hard.
Correct. And also as well, one thing I think is, I think it's why people might have lent towards initially calling this deck Control, which we swiftly nipped in the bud, is that the Shard Shatter and the Blade Dance, for me, are two of the best cards in the whole deck. And that sounds very silly for a deck that hits face for for a million. But look at those two cards against Mage. Like, sometimes Sorcerer's Apprentice is tough to deal with frozen minions. Nope, you can just deal with it. Same with the I-Beams. The AoE clears lock out so many aggressive pushes, and it's why it also does well versus Rogue in general. There's nowhere to hide from these stealth minions.
Right.
But so far, there is the Apprentice in Jarla's hand. And I imagine he's going to be going for Cram Session here, or do you think he's afraid of this Swamp Ooze?
It's tough. I mean, the Arcane Breath is technically something to do this turn, but he might still find that off the One Thief anyway. Like, this is one of the difficult things about playing this deck, is like, he has a Sorcerer's Apprentice in his hand already, right? So you kind of feel like you should start setting up for nutty Sorcerer's Apprentices turns as quickly as possible. You should start setting up for nutty Sorcerer's turns as quickly as possible. Like, you still have to think about this turn. You can't just, like, float 3 mana this turn to set up for an Apprentice on a following turn. spending your mana in Hearthstone is still generally a pretty good thing.
Yeah, and spending some 4 mana is planning to do as Jarla takes up that potion. And he might go potion, Sorcerer's Apprentice potion this turn, just to get 1 for 1 mana.
He's actually taken it, and you've still managed to elevate it to a point where you're getting baited by potion. Like, no, obviously that play is hideous. He's never going to do that.
That's true. And that's why I suggest it.
No.
I-Beam's here, going to be able to clean this up pretty nicely.
He shot the small one and it lived.
Look. Jarla's bluffing and he's picking potion.
Yeah.
Jarla just needs to play mage every single game of his career now, as far as I'm concerned. This is what the people want to see.
Okay.
Seriously though, going back to a little bit more serious parts, this is a small issue that if Jarla doesn't do anything significant on this board this turn, which is quite hard to do based on what he has in his hand, Coin Sociologist is going to be a problem because it's going to summon 3 threes with Rush? 3, sorry. And it's less about them even having clearing power and more having a 5/5 and 3/3/3s on turn 6 or turn 7 for Jarla. And can he answer that kind of board? And a lot of the time versus Mage, the answer is actually just no. And they die.
So I think, based on that analysis, which I think is absolutely on point, and based on the fact that Jarla's made his bed here by taking Potion of Illusion, he absolutely has to make this play this turn. It's the only thing he can do that makes a threatening board.
Just 2 middle-of-the-line cards. Where does he put the choice?
Honestly, but as a serious point, though, like, I do respect the fact that he has just done it occasionally, right? Like, put it on the bigger one, especially when it's kind of close. Because if you never put it on the bigger one, you're never going to get away with that bluff in a situation where it actually ends up mattering, right? So just, like, put that idea in your opponent's mind in situations where it doesn't matter that much. Like, sure, there's probably actual EV in that.
It's just a fighting game approach, right? Just make your opponent think things and then just do the opposite later.
Yeah, you throw him on wake up 3 times, then you hit him with the shimmy.
But as you can see now, Casie, even with that pretty good play with the potion there, generating so many minions, of course, from Jarla, Casie still has solid board control, and he does have more where that came from, because if Casie so chooses, he can use this Lapidary to actually have the attack trade off another minion, which then keeps the big minions on board for his side. Which then is going to continue to ask Jarla to try and deal with them. And like I said earlier, it's actually pretty hard. He is needing the Polket, though, just to get to those skulls.
Works against
Evolving Missile's not really an appeasing option right here either. I do wonder if it's just, what do you think of trade ping on the 5/5 and just call that a day?
I will crush your delusions.
I think Astromancer comes down.
As well, I guess.
Yeah. Like, yep, fine with that as a plan, but again, you can't just be hoarding cards. You do have to spend your mana each turn and actually stay competitive on the board state.
Oh, every time today I've said, it needs to get Polket for a skull. The player just rips the skull off the top anyway. Never mind. Didn't get any soul fragments either. The 0 mana soul share, he's just going to put more fragments in.
Mana burn's a decent pickup, honestly.
It is. It's all starting to stack up because now there's 5 damage from the Lapidary, and there's, 8 damage for 4 mana from the 2 Twin Slice?
Yep. Still 4 fragments remaining in deck, so no real danger that he's not going to be able to activate any of these power cards that he needs to. Casey's looking pretty comfortable here. Jarla looks also he's some way off doing anything overly powerful.
Although his deck is reshuffled. We need to remember no skull off the top now because he shuffled souls fragments in afterwards.
It was never in order, was it?
Oh no, he never shuffled anyway. Oh, I'm confusing myself because I said Polket. Okay, so
Raven, go have a lie down. I had a game
I need
off.
it.
You can take this one off. No,
yeah, I was going to say, when do I get my 10 minutes?
Don't actually do that.
I could be Pocket would be pretty sick soon anyway. But Jarla just needs to get this giant on board, doesn't he? I think that's got to be pretty quickly priority number one. Because you cannot let Demon Hunter just swing every single turn.
Right.
Warriors of the frozen wastes, rise up!
It's not a pretty turn, is it? Jarla played a lot of cards that turn and ended up with a 1-1 on board, a 2-2 on board, and an Ogre Magi in his hand. That doesn't really seem like a very powerful Hearthstone turn.
No, but Deep Freeze is a very powerful Hearthstone card.
True.
And he does have it. The only problem is he took the Khadgar, but can't actually play Khadgar Deep Freeze this turn. And I think he has to play Deep Freeze this turn. Or are you thinking the old Khadgar Prime? Okay.
Excellent start. And now it's Chaos. Hello? Hello? Does he have space for both? He does. Okay, he just has a Prime again. A couple more Primordial Studies and he'll get it cheap enough to just play it again this turn.
Oh!
Are we back to Mage Spells now?
Oh
Nope, we are not back to Mage Spells yet.
What? That's just a how to beat Demon Hunter box. He has a Noble Sacrifice and Counterspell, I believe. The deep
What's he gonna Noble Sack? His face is frozen for the rest of the game.
No. There is a way these Watch Elementals can be cleared. It's just tough.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. There's layers of safety from Jarla. It's insane. It's not just one good thing happened. Everything happened there. And there's just nothing.
Casie can't even play that now, right? He needs to top deck Shard Shatter Mystic.
Or Blade Dance.
Or play Dance and just really believe, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Casey's just out.
Yep, and you see the shrug from Jarla. I mean, yep, the game was looking really rough for him. That Prime into the box. I've never seen a box so directed at one archetype before, right? It was crazy. It's like, what? Right, open the box, right? What are you against? Fill this in. Okay, right, I got you covered. Because it did everything he needed it to do. Even if Casie had like the perfect response, let's say the Magtheridon and Shard Shatter, well, as I mentioned, there's then still a counterspell to block a Twin Slice or, whatever, which is annoying. And then the Noble Sacrifice to block another attack. So there was still not... It wouldn't have been Jarla would have just won, but there was still multiple layers of defense that Casie would have had to get through. That looked incredibly unfortunate there for Casie. And that now means, Sol, it's the first Bomb Warrior we've seen on stream today, and it's going to be what Casie needs to 3-0 Jarla's lineup.
Certainly is, yeah, things we've learned. Low-key, Yogg-Saron just really hates Soul Demon Hunter.
Jeez.
But yeah, as I mentioned, it was Casie and Bunny Hopper and that practice group that really put this deck together, like the really, really fast, slimmed-down version of Bomb Warrior that plays like double upgrade. Casie has Greenskin and Krastenov in his deck, 2 Horde Pillagers, extremely slimmed-down version, cutting class in there as well. It's just basically all bombs and card draw with just the minimum amount of attention paid to actually killing your opponent's minions and staying alive.
I believe it's 1 Horde Pillager, or at least that's what I'm looking at on my list, so we'll see.
Is it really? Okay. My deck
that's what it looks like, because he's playing the Galakron as well,
okay.
from what I can see. So, yeah, the Galakron is the new this week edition, right? Is the inclusion as the evolution from last week, and it's one I really like actually playing against it solo. Is just the extra damage it can push forward just with that hero power is often fantastic.
You are correct. For some reason, my deck tracker thought that this was RDU. It's not. It's Casie. I've told it now.
But yeah, are you a fan of Galakron? The Galakron evolution?
I actually am, yeah. I was expecting not to be. It's the kind of card that just like sits in a deck and just like screams at me to hate it. But after I played with it a few times, I think it makes absolute sense. And like to be clear, this is Galakron in a deck with 0 invokes. You never invoke it. You play it, you draw 1 minion, maybe that helps you out, but it's just to turn your hero power from something that you do not care about into something that helps your game plan, which is smacking your opponent in the face really hard.
This game is kicking off here. Casie does have this Armor Smith down, starting to rack up the armor just to maybe make him a little bit safer versus any shenanigans late game. But I think most importantly, it is just board control right now. But if you want some insight into what's all things a bomb warrior and how to play it, I heard almost physical pain in his voice in testing whenever he had to swing his weapon into one of my minions. I think that's a pretty clear outline of how he thinks you should play the deck. Weapons go face.
What was it we're doing? Bomb Warrior versus Galakron Warlock, and there were 2 spots where I convinced myself it was correct to hit a 3-1 and just died a little inside. Oh, it was horrible.
I'll show you who's boss.
As if to rub salt in the wound. And the previous game ending, I guess, Casie has not got hold of a weapon yet.
Did you say rub sottle in the wound?
I mean, salt, both of them sound pretty terrible to me.
Yeah, I mean it's quite good if that is what you said.
Yeah, I'm gonna say yeah. That's exactly what I said.
Okay.
The no weapon here from Casie though is incredibly rough, isn't it? You don't want to be hitting these turns with this many card draws as well, and not hitting a wrench caliber yet.
No, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is probably quite a tilter for Casie in this situation, because he plays all this card draw, he plays 2 Corsair Cash, he plays 2 Wrench Caliber. Like, you should be picking that up by this point.
And there's all the payoff, right? The 2 cutting class, the Dread Corsair, the Krastenov, all of the payoff is in Casey's hand and just not the weapon he's looking for. Obviously now he does have to make do with the weapon he can get hold of, and there you go, another slap in the face of the green skin. Obviously he's going to draw it from the Ankar, but Casie just has to make do with what he's got right now. If the Wrench Calibers at the bottom of the deck, that's where they are. You've got to make it work somehow.
Yeah, and I will say I think this matchup is pretty good from Casey's side, to the point where he really doesn't need to panic about this situation whatsoever. Like, I think he's still comfortably in control of proceedings. If he wasn't able to answer this board state, maybe that would be a different story, because not only are all of his Wrench Calibers in the bottom half of his deck, both of his Brawls are as well, but just Shield Slam to clear up the only relevant thing, and now he's off to the races, because now this Krastenov, this green skin, there's 2 upgrades left remaining in his deck. Those cutting classes are going to end up free sooner rather than later, so he can pop off and get the rest of the way through his deck. Blink and look back, and Jarla will have 8 bombs in his deck. I promise you that.
Right, and maybe a help of the Armor Smith, but generally just the way that the early game has gone, Casie has plenty of health, right? He's not under threat of, if a Prime comes down, I might just be dead, or if there's one good combo Cyclone, or a Giant comes down, I'm in trouble. He has tons of health, and now, as you mentioned, this is when it starts getting cooking, so Jarla should be quite afraid right now.
Small correction, Raven, but based on Jarla's primes, no matter what the game state is, if Prime comes down, you are dead.
Yeah, honestly, with the way the last one went, I imagine the Prime would just play like a Swampoos or something against the weapon and you'd be like, wait, what?
Swampoos and find some way to put a Worm Rest Purifier in your hand that you then just play.
Would not surprise me.
Yeah.
So we know it's bad for the mage, generally, but what is it Jarla actually has to do? Is he reliant on something as nutty as a Prime? Or is there actually a stronger, sort of more consistent game plan he can piece together?
So Prime's help, largely a lot of his win conditions melt away when he doesn't get control of the game early. The fact that Casie tempoed out and was ahead, that cuts a big hole in your win condition as Jarla, because if you can get ahead with a few like lab partners and small minions early on, maybe get a couple of swings in unanswered with an Astromancer Solarian, suddenly you can then build on that game plan, and Casie will have to spend more turns thinking about removal than he will about just smacking you in the face with a giant Wrench Caliber. And then all it takes is one, like, Evocation for a couple of burn spells, Mana Cyclone for a couple of burn spells, or one late-game board sticking, and, like, you end the game, right? You just get lethal and you end it.
Right.
When that doesn't happen, you've really just kind of got to exhaust the situation. Like, I actually had a game like this in testing with TJ last night, where my initial push failed, and then so TJ stacked a bunch of bombs into my deck, so I kind of slowed down and just tried to like grind him out of the game, not quite drawing so many cards as I normally would. And in the end, I had like 6 or 7 bombs left in my deck and needed to hit burn off Evocation to win the game, which I did. But that was a very, very lucky outcome because a large majority of TJ's armor gain in that game was buried in the bottom of his deck, which would have like completely shut off my win condition.
I have a question, Sol.
Yes.
Are we going to see the repetitive study plan into the cheap Malygos? Look at what Jarla has! A 7-mana Mali, now an Archmage Antonidas. I'll say this right now. I'll say 2 things. One, Jarla does need to speed up his turns a little bit because he definitely did not pick there, did he?
I'm 99% sure he did not want a Frost Nova over a Conjurer's Calling, no.
And 2, if Jarla wins this game, he's the best player in the world. As long as he plays the Malygos. We'll see.
This weapon's just 35 damage!
It is ridiculous, isn't it? Once this deck gets going, and there isn't just a straight hard weapon removal option for the opponent, well, this is what it looks like, right? Especially when they draw so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what that last turn was for Jarla. Like, this is a persistent issue at this point, right? That he's just running out of time on these mage turns. He really does need to start moving a little bit quicker.
All in due time.
Go Malygos and then Arcane Breath. Wouldn't work, wouldn't proc, obviously, but I'm just meaning it's a 1-mana removal.
I think you need the spell. I think the spell for, Frostbolt, Deep Freeze kind of stuff is more important than having a Mali on board.
So then, is it a start with Arcane Breath?
Yeah, just do it like this, right? Because you want the spell damage to be able to finish it off with ping, potentially. It's got to be a fireball, I think.
This. Yep. Because, let's be honest, Jarla's not winning the late game.
Nope.
He's going to die. So, whether this even ever gets there, if there's a tiniest chance, it is worth just going for the max aggression, hoping that you can just beat him a little bit there. Is the Prime in the deck now?
For Jarla, yes it is, I believe so.
Okay. Well, so what we're saying is there's a chance. Deathwing, just clean up this board to give Casie some more room, and most importantly, just let that weapon go face. 2 more swings, more or less, and this game is over. Especially with that Galakron in hand as well.
There's the Conjurer's Calling now for Jarla. It's possible, actually, to give Jarla full credit that the Frost Nova was a real pick, because you could potentially say that, okay, I'm going to, on my opponent's like Blastmaster Boom turn, I'm going to Archmage Frost Nova him, which you're now kind of seeing modified for this turn. Like, this may have actually been a more deliberate pick than I initially gave him credit for. Like, I guess this is a win condition, theoretically.
But what this is a guaranteed play, because no matter who wins, there's the Blade Storm to back it up with for Casie as well. And yep, this is a very difficult matchup. We saw Casie didn't even get his Wrench Caliber. The most, the first half of the game didn't have access to his Wrench Caliber.
I believe it was card number
more than okay.
Yeah, I believe it was card number 17 in his deck overall, his first Wrench Caliber. And even then, that was like because it was pulled out by the Corsair Cache. So I guess Corsair Cache was his 16th card. Is the right way to look at it.
You turn it into Freeze Mage. And go just for rolling Fireball Ping Face. What is it? Rolling Fireball Cyclone at this point?
Sure.
I'm just saying, like, for Jarla to just need the maximum whatever, right? Like,
Whatever you want to do, Raven, we can do it. That's how dire this situation is.
The damage is there, Sol. Jarla's just going to buy enough time.
Amazing. He's dead, though.
Yeah,
Galakron,
it's not
one of
gonna
the
work.
additional benefits is it does unfreeze your hero as well, which is actually a key interaction that you do want to know in this matchup, because as you can see, those key late game freezes are one of the few ways where Mage can claw back into it. Just rewinding to my answer to the question when you said, like, how does Mage actually win that matchup? Right. You can see the difference, right, between you got bored early and you hit them with a 1-3 and a 3-2 for a couple of turns, and then all that stuff started happening with Antonidas, Frost Nova, generate a Fireball, your Cyclone gets you a Pyroblast, you freeze face for a turn to buy yourself the extra turn that you need to burn out the game at the end. Like, you can see how it starts to come together, but you've got to make some kind of foothold in the early game. Like, the fact that Casie managed to tempo out early and then just make the world's biggest French caliber and start going face actually kind of worked out pretty well for him in that matchup. But, undeniably, you would still much rather have that Corsair cash early on to secure you the Wrench caliber.
Right. And here is how the series is going to continue here. Jarla moving over to his Druid by the looks of things. And here's my question, Sol. Casie was allowed his Warrior up, right? Which is obviously why he's been playing it. But that means that he had his Priest banned off, and Jarla has Druid and Highlander Priest left. What do you make of the ban? Is this potentially a punish for the ban for Jarla, and maybe even for the series?
I mean, I don't know if you can call it that. Like, I think Jarla is deliberately in the mindset where he's not necessarily banning Warrior. Like, I think you can see that in the way that he has his Priest built as well, since he has the Ooze and the Sticky Finger in there, that he doesn't feel like Bomb Warrior is going to sweep his lineup in the way that it could sweep some others. And even if it comes down to it, like, Highlander Priest with double weapon destruction should be fine in that matchup. And Druid is by no means an easy matchup for the Bomb Warrior either. Like, it's a very reasonable for this fast build of the deck, because you don't necessarily have to worry about killing all their threats. You can kill them before they can get all of their threats out on board, because you're just so aggressive. But it's by no means a given either, so I don't think you can call this a punish. No, I think this is a very clear strategy from Jarla, and it's succeeded for him up until this point. And I think the way that he has built his deck lists supports the idea that he has going into this with the ban strategy.
Right, and we have seen it in the past as well. I'll just honestly continually, is Jarla does like to do his own thing, right? He stuck on Galakron Warlock a lot last season when a lot of people just switched straight off. He definitely has his own opinions, and the strong opinions on how to approach the tournament setting. And on one hand, as you mentioned, you make every top 8 in Grandmasters for a year, or toward getting there.
Getting there,
then you can't really overly argue with results, especially with his just general win rate. But on the other hand, he isn't winning them, I guess, is the next. So it's definitely an interesting player to watch in terms of just completely different ban strategies, completely different lineup strategies as well.
I think you saw it if you were paying attention to Jarla's camera there. Also nice to have Casie back, by the way. That as soon as that Corsair Cash was played, there was a rather distinct look of "oh darn" on Jarla's face, and now that is confirmed by the coin Wrench Caliber coming out in place of, I think, what he would have preferred to see, the Anchor situation.
Right. Jarla does have overgrowth. He has access to the bloom as well. Guardian animals, Ysera's there too, and my. How should I phrase? Okay, I'm overdoing this, and you'll understand. But again, my interest in this series is if Casie plays a Corsair Cash and Jarla's nodding like, okay, this is going to be very, very tough. That's what the deck does, right? Like the deck does that pretty consistently. So it's just interesting that the response seemed so negative to something that the deck is built to do. But Jarla has powerful tools, right? He has his Guardian Animals. The Ysera's there coming up soon. He could just drop the Ysera now if he wanted to. I actually think I like the Ysera drop. I feel it's less consistently punished.
Punished by what? What are you saying Guardian Animals gets punished by?
Yeah, so if you double up on the same animal, then Blade Storms is just a nightmare. It's just a cheap card gone.
Yeah.
Barov. Basically, any of the removal for the Guardian animals, if they go on Ysera, I think you are way happier as the Druid. So you may as well do like a removal test with Ysera first, and then follow up with Guardian animals.
But if you bloom the Ysera, and then they have Bladestorm, and then they Bladestorm your Ysera, you have 6 mana next turn, which doesn't give you any powerful play. Isn't that worse? Wouldn't you rather get Bladestormed and not be overloaded and just be able to play another big threat the next turn?
It's true. I am assuming, summoning at least 3 dragons next turn to help out. So
Okay.
yeah, you are right. The lack of follow-up here would be a problem. Thresher on its own would probably just not be relevant enough.
No.
Yep, Casie, no time for messing about. He's got his wrench caliber and he's happy.
There is something very pleasing about having Wrench Caliber equipped. It does cheer you up.
Can get some usage out of this Bloom as well, and not a complete waste of mana, as he does have the nature studies.
Ooh,
Oasis.
Hidden Oasis.
You're nothing.
3-1 in play for a little bit of Bladestorm protection as well.
Someone's got to lead the charge.
Or not.
Ha-ha!
I guess he's already played the Sky Raider at this point, so it's not going to work out.
Yeah, and I don't think Casey's bothered, right? He's not going to suddenly
Right.
die from a Ysera. Oh, he always has Lord Barov Bladestorm to clear up no matter what. So worst case scenario, he clears a bigger board next turn. Best case scenario, Jarla might just die. At this point, just suddenly on 9 health.
He is very suddenly on 9 health, yes. Mount Seller, play your spells this turn, get your board dealt with, and then try and refill with Gidra into Hidden Oasis on the next turn is what leaps out to me.
Right. The only, you could argue like shame here for Jarla is he can't follow up with the. I guess he doesn't need to. He still has the Broom for next turn, right? With Lake Thresher could be pretty nice if there's any threats on board.
Well, I think he's going Gidra Hidden Oasis next turn, almost certainly.
Sure.
Because he'll just have to, right? He's going to be dead otherwise. And he's already running the risk that he's not dead to bombs this way.
Yeah, and that's also the weird issue with how this deck is, the Warrior deck has been developed, is sometimes you just can't stop being hit by the weapon, right? And there's just some decks just aren't built to stop it, which is just a bit awkward because it's like, well, I'll just try my best to race my opponent when they have like an unlimited charge, massively hitting weapon. The games can feel very, very tough to deal with in this circumstance.
All right, big deal. That was a 1 in 9 for Jarla to die that turn, but I do really like the way that he set this out because now he does get to play Hearthstone. He gets a big heal.
That was a good plan.
He gets a big heal. He gets a big minion in play. So now the kind of initiative switches back. Casie is done with his Wrench Caliber. So he's now at the stage of the game where either he finds a Horde Pillager or his second Wrench Caliber and can keep up the pressure, or he just has to remove threats and wait for Jarla to die. And if it's the latter, which I think is what you have to hope it is if you're Jarla in this position, Jarla kind of has the tools to actually put up a decent amount of pressure here.
Right. And you might think, and look, well, should Casie have swung then if he's running so many, upgrades and all these additional plus durability effects on the weapon? It's like, right, but one, he could have just won the game, but also he runs multiple more Wrench Calibers in his list, if that makes sense, with that Horde Pillager, with the other Wrench Caliber, and arguably the Corsair Cache number 2, right? So there's a pretty solid chance that he'd get to one of those anyway.
Yeah, the big one is just increasing your chances of winning the game immediately by putting the additional bomb in and cutting your opponent below an additional breakpoint. That is a very, very big deal. Now, this Battle Rage is probably game-defining for Jarla.
Boom.
Boom is a big deal. 3 bombs in deck currently, so that is the full board.
Jarla can finally use this Thresher Broom combo, though, to clear this board.
Yep.
Because, again, although the minions don't look that threatening, you don't want to be taking any extra damage if you are sat on Jarla's side of the board right now.
Agreed.
problem is, it's like, oh, overflow to get to my good cards. Oh wait, overflow gets to the bad cards too.
He's going to do it, actually.
I think he has to.
Yeah, he absolutely has to draw. I was a little surprised that he's doing it right now. I was kind of with you in that the Lake Thresher did seem pretty clean. But absolutely, yeah, overflow needs to be cast in this game.
Yeah. And he does have to keep in mind, and everyone does, of course, that there are almost like just as many portals as there are bombs, right? So
Only getting one though.
There are twice as many portals as there are bombs. Which, actually, thinking about it, did increase his chances to die on the previous turn, because any portal that he drew, when I said it was 1 in 9, if he draws a portal, he redraws something that could be a bomb. So he was actually more likely than 1 in 9 to die on the previous turn. But my attempts at doing that maths live will end there.
Fate of the world hangs in the balance.
very worrying though, because again, like we don't get full view of exactly what Jarla sees. But what if that was a rush dragon? You know, like it seemed like those were coming out at the end of the turn. I don't know. It's a little bit spicy for me.
Consider this our house.
Loot? What more can I ask for?
It's just a Caligos and a Sarah on the board in case he's like, nah, fam, I'm good. I'm going face.
Free guardian animals? Does it even get him anything?
How curious.
I don't think so, no. I think he's empty.
I have to just bite the bullet and start with the nature studies, but there are good cards he could get, right? Another Oasis would be fantastic. Any kind of heal, any kind of taunt. Mark of the Wild. Is that just worth it?
It might be, yeah. I mean, I'd certainly take it here. The problem you run into, though, is like, as soon as you start taunting, they start clearing, right? Like, that's the reason Casie hasn't used this Blade Storm or this Brawl to answer this board state. Is that he doesn't need to. There's 8 damage in play, and he can hit face with his weapon. Therefore, he doesn't have to do anything else. So, I think ideally, you'd like to have made a board that Casie would have to clear, and then refill with the taunt after that, you know, like once the removal has already come out. But Jarla just doesn't have that luxury.
Was there a small thing there as well where he should have traded the broom in? Is that ever enough to warrant it? Or do you think he needs every point of damage possible?
To play around the Brawl.
Yeah, but I guess this plays around Blade Storm.
Yep.
So, yeah, just as much as one as the other.
Yeah, he plays around Blade Storm. He also does play one copy of Survival of the Fittest in his deck, so extra minions on board for top deck outs is a thing.
This just, it feels like one of the most one-sided games we've seen. Apart from the previous game of Warrior vs. Mage, which also looked incredibly one-sided. Crystal Powers more heal. But does it matter?
It's looking very much like it does not, Raven, no. Because Casie still has Boom Blade Storm to follow all of this up as well.
And for me as well, okay, heal and survive, but the Thresher has to go into the green skin. So it's just as far away from winning the game, right? Like you said, there is the survival of the fittest, but Jarla can't, isn't pushing any down. Oh, okay. I do like this, though. I do like this.
Yeah, I do.
It's like I was just saying, Jarla's not pushing any damage face, so how does he ever win the game?
Yeah.
And this pushes damage face, so you know what? I like that play a lot from Jarla.
Chance this fails. Now he's good. It just went 7 into 5, then the Thresher would have still been alive. I think you saw Casie checking for that with his weapon.
Made to fit.
Seeing what he could target, what he couldn't. And then reach the happy conclusion that he could smash face that turn.
Not that it matters, does it? He can't rush this, which means he's got no draws for dragons.
Yeah, he's just dead to Boom Blade Storm.
Yeah. Well, there could be 6 wands into the...
There's only 5 spaces as well. Oh,
even better.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Just wait for all these animations. Yeah, okay, we're good.
oh,
And he's dead.
lethal. Casie evens up this series with this Bomb Warrior. This, I believe, Warrior the most banned class throughout Swiss across the regions and throughout this weekend so far. But Casie doing a good job of fighting back now, and it is all going to come down to a matchup you broke down just very briefly earlier on of maybe even why Jarla felt comfortable leaving up this Warrior of this Highlander Priest from Jarla that does contain not only an acidic swamp ooze, but also that I've lost the card now. The do you
bold
see this
sticky
place?
finger.
Yep, there it is. Yeah. Wait. No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Oh, I'm looking at Casey's list. I'm looking at Casey's list. Ah, too many different priest builds. Sorry. Yes, I was so confused, but yes, the Cobalt Sticky Finger is there as well. So this is the double weapon destruction. The thing to remember is there is the Horde Pillager 2 from Casie, so it doesn't mean that 100% of his wrench calibers are dead if he draws them both. But there's also Zephyrus, which can act as weapon removal as well. So I don't know, Saul. Do you think this priest is enough to beat the warrior?
Yes, I do think it's favoured. If you look at the way ladder's gone over the past few days, particularly sort of around top 200 or so, it was all Bomb Warrior for like 24 hours, and then the priest started playing Weapon Destruction, and then all the Bomb Warriors disappeared 48 hours later. It really was like that night and day as to how quickly it had an impact on the metagame, and it's why I kept bringing out this line of like, it feels like Bomb Warrior is the deck that's dictating the metagame right now, because even if it's not being played, it's the deck that people are having to react to keep it out of the equation. And when you were describing Ooze, Sticky Finger, Zephyrus, you did not even cover the full horror of trying to get weapons to go face against this build of the deck. Because if you've ever tried to play Bomb Warrior against this deck, you know that as soon as one Weapon Destruction lands, they raise dead that thing, and then they have it again and again and again, and the priest just makes you beat your head against a wall and go do anything else except play Hearthstone.
Yeah, so the 2-card combo in hand is pretty funny. My question then, as these guys are kicking off the early game, why didn't Jarla queue it last game if it's so favoured? I
mean, because it didn't matter. Like, I don't know. What do you want me to say?
Well, I heard in last Hero Standing you pick your counter queues into the deck. But no, there is just the one deck left. So regardless, Casie does have to beat both, take this series across the board. But as we are moving towards those mid-game turns where things are going to start kicking off, Jarla gets to drop down this Lazul and have a little peek at some of the cards.
Yes! Sticky Finger Horde Pillager, let's go!
I'm the Bomb Warrior now!
Yeah. He's got to be careful because he doesn't necessarily want to be playing too many minions here. Like, this is already his first minion, and then Kobold Sticky Finger, if he sees Wrench Caliber soon, will be his second minion.
Right.
So he doesn't necessarily want to dilute his pool with too many other options.
But at this point, only seeing the Ankar. Not too worried, right? He can just heal pass if he really wants to.
Yeah, you're chilling. And this is something you can do from the warrior side, is like just go half the way in on your Ankar, like try and tempt it, right? Like you play the Ankar, like, you want to destroy this? They turn it down, you put one buff on it, like, now you want to destroy this? And just try and leave yourself in a spot where you do still have enough gas. Like maybe you let them draw one Weapon Destruction and then get that to line up on your Ankar, but it's tough. I think generally the best thing to do is just say, like, if they draw the Weapon Destruction, I'm in trouble. But it does look like Casie is trying to tease a little bit here, making the weapon nice and juicy.
I had a world famous Crazy Raven suggestion there.
Yeah.
What about just playing the Doc that turn? Is that... Well, they kind of have to deal with it, right?
They do. Yeah.
Well, how?
It's kind of hard
and if
to
it
deal
doesn't
with.
get dealt with, it does start ramping up the Ankar as a threat, right? I don't know. I think it's worth thinking about.
What is Elun's will?
Indeed. What is Elun's will? Is it Ankar or is it Wrench Caliber?
I mean, all I see is Jarla's just ability to hero power past this turn.
Well, he does have 10 cards in his hand, which is a bit of a handicap for the hero power pass plan.
Oh, okay. I mean, you can throw the coin away, right?
Hmm.
My point is, other than trying to throw cards away, does Jarla need to do anything in this game apart from steal a Wrench Caliber?
Right now, no.
Right.
Absolutely not. But I think also, this is what I was going to suggest. Like, if he can be ahead on board at the same time, like, why not, right? Seems reasonable.
Oh, Kronks drew both Galakrons then, that was weird. Well, now we have 2 minions in the Raise Dead pool. And also bear in mind that, like, Jarla might not have to Raise Dead the steal. He does run effectively 3 potential weapon removals.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's all in on Raise Dead. It is just an interesting path to explore, though, because if you can do that and completely cripple your opponent, you should probably have that as a plan A. But I guess last turn Jarla decided that plan B was fine and just went with the Kronks.
Yeah, I think, like, the double Wrench Caliber steal, like, with a revived Kobold Sticky Finger, is the ultimate checkmate. Because then Wrench Calibers haven't been destroyed on Casey's side of the board, so it can never come back. There's no Horde pillaging it. They're just gone. So I think that is, like, the hardest possible checkmate from the priest side of the board. But yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily have to sit around all day waiting, because Jarla can't really afford to do that. Like, he's still 2 out of 3 to get the Kobold if the Kobold was to die right now. And as you mentioned, there is still a Zephyrus and a Natural Ooze to come as well, but they're not quite as good as stealing the minion away. Stealing the weapon away, sorry.
Forbidden Words, not too bad at all. Obviously, Casey's deck does not like pop off with Risky Skipper by any means. But most importantly, I think the Jarla just getting some cards out of his hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Keeping the hand empty, keeping the game clean. Now Casie does have... It's not guaranteed bomb damage, but he does have 3 damage every single turn if he wants.
Which is a really big deal, yeah. I think this is a big part of the reason why Casie wants to include Galakrond in this list, or one of the reasons why Galakrond in this list is probably a particularly good idea, is that if your Bomb Warrior is being left up, it's probably being left up by greedy priests with lots of weapon destruction. If you're going to have any chance of winning that matchup, early Galakrond is the way that you're going to do it. And I actually think that the way this draw has panned out, where Jarla's kind of been sat waiting to react to a Wrench Caliber that Casie has just never drawn, has actually given Casie a window in this matchup now, where just repetitive damage from Galakrond can actually potentially go over the line. Like, he's essentially just playing like a weird Soul Demon Hunter now instead, right? Where it's not bomb damage, it's just persistent face-to-face damage every single turn. It's going to try and eventually overwhelm Priest.
And the thing as well is, we talk about the weapons getting stolen. It's not like they do nothing beforehand, right? Like, Casie gets to equip the weapon, swing, probably with hero power, so that's going to be 6, and shuffle a bomb in. So it's not like the weapon achieves 0, right? Okay, that's funny. Like, it gets work done. It still shuffles damage into, the opponent's deck.
Yeah.
It just doesn't do it as much as it would want to, but it's still a reasonable chunk of damage. And also, as well, this Galakrond hero power is going to turn Jarla off a little bit from playing his own Galakrond, because you lose access to that consistent heal as well.
Right.
Now looking at this, there is the Shadow Word Death. Oh, this is nice actually. Mind Flayer Kaj.
Sethic Death.
It's really strong here.
Debatable whether the Renew gets used here. An extra Apotheosis being generated might just give Jarla a little bit of a thought that he can throw this Renew away, cycle it off the Sethic, but I think I'll take a Renew in my hand over a random Sethic spell any day of the week.
That's the point, right? Because what are you looking for that is better than Renew right now? And I don't know is my answer. and maybe an apotheosis here. But even that's a push, so yeah, I do like the renew hold for now. Because you're going to be taking damage this game.
You just play the renew, you pick Radiance off the renew, and the Sethic Veilweaver gives you your renew back. There you go.
Consider this our house core.
Now, I see. Building his own weapon here, and again, this is the difference, right? As you mentioned, he was almost taunting Jarla to try and steal or break this weapon, but it's still a weapon. It's still dealing damage. It's not like Ankar has a 0 attack. So even now, the fact that he's held onto it for so long is going to help him push some more damage, and Jarla has to consider what the response is. Does he have to steal this Ankar?
Well, here's another X factor that we just completely haven't talked about yet: the Mind Render Elucia. One Corsair cache has been played, and that is the Ankar that is currently equipped. That did receive the buff from the first Corsair cache, so Jarla might want to wait for some kind of signal that there's actually potentially a Wrench Caliber in hand right now. But there's also an argument just to say that potentially he could use some warrior removal spells right now to be able to take care of some of this board state.
That's true. He does have a Deathwing in that Karj though, so even if his turn went down to trade the Karj into the 4-2 and then just leave a Deathwing on board, that is looking pretty solid versus this Armor Smith.
That's 5 damage that you're just leaving up that can hit you in the face. That's terrifying. That doesn't look fine to me at all.
It's just Apotheosis it then. Then you heal for what, 14 next turn? If it lists. Right. Well, Jarla has pulled the trigger on the Alacron here, taking down both minions, keeping hold of his board. But now there isn't just a consistent little hero power heal chipping away. So Jarla does have to be careful.
I am very much enjoying this dance. At this point, Casey's just like, okay, if you're not going to remove this weapon, I'm just going to keep hitting you with it. That's absolutely fine by me.
And most importantly, the Kobold Sticky Finger means you could just steal the weapon back.
Oh, no. I didn't even notice that got generated.
So now Jarla has to wait till there's one charge left on a Wrench Caliber to steal it and swing, which is never going to happen because the damage will already be done at that point.
Wait, what? That'll happen pretty often, right? If you draw a 2-charge Wrench Caliber, and then Casie equips it and swings it, and then Jarla steals it and swings it, and it's done.
But Casie knows he plays it, right?
Yeah.
So now that he has the Sticky Finger, could he just use upgrades instead and just hold?
Okay. All right. I like
you know what I mean, though, right?
Jarla
hasn't generated the Sticky Finger, right? That's in his deck list.
Yes.
I'm going very deep down this rabbit hole, by the way, and I know I am. It's just, but it's funny.
Yeah. Once again, 10 cards remaining in Casey's deck and no Wrench Caliber yet. Like, whether that's even a positive or a negative for him at this point, gonna be honest, not entirely sure, but it is a fact.
And on top of that, I know Casie has a full hand, so it's not the straightforward of questions. But at this point, with 10 cards left, does Casie actually even want to draw cards?
I think he still does.
Does he want? He does want to still accelerate. Okay.
I think so, yeah. What's happening? Curious as to where this turn's ending up. Because I was okay with it up until now. He's going to skip a barrel of the rest of it. Yeah.
I thought he was going to just shield slam the Deathwing. I'll be honest. I forgot the Sethic had Grave Rune on it. Well. We're getting into the end game now, Sol, because there is a Wrench Caliber in hand.
Yeah, and this weapon destruction ping pong is not going to end well for Jarla currently. So Wrench Caliber comes down, Jarla steals it. Assuming Casie does play around it with the hold,
right,
as we were talking about. Jarla steals it, Casie steals it back, Jarla oozes it, but it's then destroyed, so Casie can then Horde Pillager it. He does still have a chance of Horde Pillagering the Anchor he's been using the whole game, but we'll see.
And the biggest thing for me, though, and in all that time, Casey's still probably pressing his hero power when he swings as well, which means there's a lot of extra damage going to Jarla's face regardless of how they play around with these weapons.
Okay, Jarla knows the answer is Horde Pillager, so I think the only thing he's thinking about here is whether he wants that hand space or not. Yeah, okay. He's already stolen the Horde Pillager once from Casey's hand. He knows it's there, so he knows that's the correct answer to the Envoy. So I think the only debate there, unless maybe he forgot that and then he remembered, I think the only debate there was, do I actually want that thing taking up a space in my hand, or should I just pick deliberately incorrect?
And you just saw it, right? He threw away the Brawl on purpose, which... Because he knew it was Brawl there, right?
No. Why would he know it was Brawl?
Hasn't he seen all the armor stats? I can't remember what the third choice was. Oh, okay. Sorry. Regardless, I think he would have not wanted a Brawl anyway, so I guess he got away with it.
All right. It's happening, Raven. We've been waiting this entire matchup for this moment.
Imagine he doesn't steal it. And you're like, what? Stop making us look stupid. We do that pretty well ourselves.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
sticky
too
finger
good.
happens.
Yeah.
Casey did swing, as I would expect him to do.
He didn't upgrade.
He didn't upgrade. He does still now have... He did Corsair Cash the second Wrench Caliber, though, which is 3 charges, which he will definitely be able to sticky finger back.
What about...
Wait. Does he break a Mind Render?
He wants to ooze Elucia, knows his opponent has a Horde Pillager, so then you ooze Elucia, play your opponent's Horde Pillager? Interesting. That is very interesting, actually. I kind of like that line, the more I think about it. You know your opponent's hand has a 3/3 Wrench Caliber and a Horde Pillager in it. You know that both of those things are there, but this is the disaster outcome. Immediately refreshing the Wrench Caliber. So you just get Sticky Finger Brawled on the backswing? Sticky Finger Blade Storm, sure.
Right. See, then I was trying to go down of, does Jarla not care because he knows there's another Wrench Caliber in hand anyway?
Right.
Oh, God, this game is breaking me, Saul. It's breaking me.
Yeah. So now it's the Ooze Mind Render?
And then he can play the other Wrench Caliber?
The Horde Pillager isn't a guaranteed caliber still?
On wings of
Could still be
Yeah,
the
so you
anchor.
play the other caliber, right?
So you play the other caliber.
Oh, apotheosis.
Okay.
He has to do it, right?
See?
He knows there's the Wrench Caliber in hand 100% of the time. It's a 4-attack weapon with a hero power to make it 7.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows if he doesn't heal, he's dead if he doesn't take the Wrench Caliber. Or
Mind
he could just
Render.
deny the equip next turn anyway with just Mind Render.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't...
Mind Render nerf
yeah.
coming into full effect there, by the way. 2 mana Mind Render. He could have Apotheosis, played the Mind Render, and still had 4 mana available for either Wrench Caliber or Horde Pillager out of his opponent's hand.
Oh yeah, Casey's got bombs in his deck.
Yep. Yeah, you still see Casey's still turbo drawing. There's 2 cards left in his deck. His bottom 2 are Shield Slam, Blastmaster Boom.
Oh, he wants the boom to end the game.
Oh, no. That's a disaster.
So... Yeah.
Yep.
Wait. Oh, okay. He could have took the 50-50, right? Of Battle Rage for a Shield Slam.
cards?
Yes.
mean, we can see he wouldn't have necessarily got it because he did draw and not get not get the shield slam, but it was an option. So, Mind Render Boom? I'm not saying Jarla knows Boom's there, but it's one card left in the deck.
Yep.
So okay. Is Mind Render Boom the best play Jarla can make? I guess that's question one, right?
Yes. I'm relatively confident that is true.
Okay.
The problem is you have to reverse engineer again. This is kind of the problem I get into with like Caster Vision, is from Jarla's perspective. Is Blastmaster Boom more likely than average to be that last card because he hasn't seen Blastmaster Boom yet?
Right.
Like, if Blastmaster Boom had been in the hand for Casie the whole time, was there a turn where it would have come down?
So this is better because he knows that he is going to steal a Wrench Caliber, right?
Sure.
So he can play the Wrench Caliber, and this turn stops Casie playing Horde Pillager.
Yes.
But for one turn.
And there go the bombs! That is Jarla's deck, remember, that Casie just drew a bomb from.
Yeah, it's like, do me a favor, mate. Hold these.
Yep.
I mean, does he really want to play Plague?
He has to. If he doesn't play Plague, his Blastmaster Boom isn't a win condition, right? Like, he Blastmaster Booms. He has no way to self-detonate because he's out of Blade Storms, he's out of Skippers. So he just plays Blastmaster Boom and then gets Plague of Death.
True.
Don't you just have to?
I was just wondering if you wanted to, like, if Cabal ever did anything. Like, if you could, like, steal or something so there's no board. And then you've got to ask the question of, well, if you... Okay, I won't play Boom. I'll just beat you up with these minions instead, right? That was my thought pattern. He might be wrong, though.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that.
Thought steal.
Yeah. Yeah, don't play that. Not a good idea.
So then, realistically, what if he Cabal Shadow Priest a 2/4 and then just goes face? Well, he could press Hero Power, but then goes face, or maybe even uses the Soul to just make another Cabal Shadow Priest?
Yep.
Or another Taunt? Oh no, it won't work.
Nope.
Silence.
I was about to say I like all of these words you're saying, Raven, and then you just had to ruin it. You just reverted to type, and something stupid happened. But no, everything up until then, fully in agreement with.
Right. This game is... I think you need to watch this game about 10 times. Oh, wow, and that's just going to be the concede there from Casie and a nod from Jarla, but honestly, there is a lot to go over in that game, and I am sure all the pros watching it will have a lot to discuss already.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin, so on. That's fantastic because it surprises me, but I do want to watch that game again because there are so many different things each player could have done, and everything they did do did make sense. It's just, was it the best play? And I think that might well be debated for the foreseeable future at this point, Saul, because that game just blew my mind.
Yeah, and a key point I was missing is that for some reason I completely disregarded that Plague of Death for most of the late game. So when we were talking about like the Mind Render interaction, and you asked the question, is Mind Render play Blastmaster Boom the best thing Jarla can do? And I answered yes. That's incorrect. It wasn't, because Blastmaster Boom wasn't a threat anymore at that point. The risky skippers were gone, the Blade Storms are gone. So Blastmaster Boom was 0 damage. It got Plague of Death every single time. So with that in mind, Jarla's late game sequencing where he took the Wrench Caliber instead, it was nothing about whether he had the read the Blastmaster Boom was there or not. That was completely irrelevant. It was the fact that he had the Blastmaster Boom beat, but he didn't necessarily have lethal set up for himself, which was actually the most important thing about getting access to that big Wrench Caliber, and potentially protecting himself from that extra bomb damage coming through. But you're absolutely right, is that was an incredibly intricately played game of Hearthstone. I've never really seen the matchup played at that level before. Like, when you watch games on ladder, be they streamed games of whatever streamer you're watching, or you're spectating someone on your friends list, or you're playing at High Legend yourself, it still mostly just seems to be, okay, here's my wrench caliber. Let's see if they have the
Right,
thing.
let's go. Yeah.
Oh, they have the thing. Okay, concede next game. Like that generally does seem to be how the matchup is playing out on ladder. But when you take it up to this level, like this is what we're here for. We want to see the best executing the matchups in the optimal, in the platonic world of forms. Who wins this matchup when both players are playing, close to optimally? Philosophy majors will understand. It's fine. Just go with
I don't understand half the stuff you say anyway,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
just chuck it in
it's
with the rest. But regardless, a really, really sick series. Casie got so close to fighting all the way back, and our first, not 3-0 sweep of the day. But that does mean we have one more match left. So I'm excited to go to a quick break while we get ready for this match. So don't go anywhere. I'll be right back to continue our Grandmasters Day.